Okay, I feel like I had to start this video off with a little bit of an explanation. This happened to me last year with season 2 of Picard, where there was just an episode that drove me a little crazy. And once again, I feel like I'm a little too vitriolic in my review. It's really more of a rant. I mean, I get a little nuts in this. I sound deranged at times. I stumble over some words. It's a mess. And don't get me wrong, I stand by what I said, but I'm a little embarrassed about how I said it. It's one of those weird things where I didn't realize how annoyed I was until I started talking about the episode. So I just want to prepare you a little bit. I even went after one of the fan theories about the show at one point, which I think was uncalled for. I apologize for that. And if you love this episode and you're liking the show so far, and this review is going to rain on your parade a little bit, please don't even watch this video. I welcome different opinions, of course, but I don't want to ruin anything for anyone. Not that I'm so arrogant as to think that my opinions on a TV show could ruin it for someone, but you know what I'm trying to say. I'm not trying to be a hater. And for anyone who says just don't watch the show if you don't like it, you're right, I probably shouldn't. And I could do that a lot easier with Discovery or Strange New Worlds. But Next Generation is maybe my favorite show of all time. And its characters are some of my favorite characters of all time. So I'm going to watch regardless. I can't help it. And some of these reviews have just become my outlet for some of my frustrations with the show. So if you're okay with listening to me vent my nerd rage for a little bit, get ready, because that's what you're going to get. Anyway, this video is already super long even without this shitty intro. So let's just get started. Just when I start feeling like this show has maybe turned a corner and is possibly heading in the right direction, there's always something that ruins it for me. There were things that actually made me feel like this could be a proper continuation of the Next Generation. But then I started to realize that it's fake. It's fake feelings brought on by the endless nostalgia. There's no depth to it. It's almost like realizing I'm in the Nexus. Some of it seems right, but it's all superficial. And overall, it just left me with an empty feeling. And normally I try to trim some of the fat for these reviews, just to get right to the important stuff. But I have a feeling I'm going to talk about pretty much everything because there was a lot of shit that bothered me. So let's just get right into it. The episode starts where we left off, of course, with Vajdik, whatever the fuck her name is, and her super duper unbeatable ship, the Shrike, following the Titan into this cloudy nebula. And they can't go to warp while they're in the nebula, but they should be able to at least hide for a while, as long as they can go further in. And Captain Shaw kind of stinks as a captain. I've already made up my mind on that. He's not Captain Jellicoe like he often gets compared to. He's just a dickhead who's in way over his head. He's constantly taking advice from everyone around him. I've seen moths that are better tacticians than this guy. And as they make their way deeper into the nebula, their sensors go down. They appear to be safe for the time being. And then we get a flashback from years ago of Picard and Riker sitting in a bar. I swear, every time anyone is off the clock in this show, they're always in a bar. Riker, maybe I could believe that, but Picard was never a bar person. How many times did you see Picard hanging out in 10 forward? But this is what he does now. And everyone's a fucking booze hound. And they share a drink. They're toasting Riker's newborn baby. It's a nice scene. It hits you over the head with the fatherhood shit. And Troy calls Riker, and this kind of made me laugh because she does not seem like Troy at all. She seems like Marina Sirtis. Yeah, sure, but not Troy. It's very comical. And then we shoot back to the present. The Titan has a little bit of downtime, so Picard goes to see Beverly, who has been helping out in sickbay. And a lot is revealed in this conversation. The last time they saw each other was when they were vacationing together over 20 years ago. They were apparently dating for a short time. And she left after they broke up, and he was called away. And Picard says we ended our romantic relationship for the 5th time. Did I miss something? Did all 5 of these romantic endeavors take place off screen? Because we never saw that shit in the show. Certainly not in the movies. Picard basically ignored her in the movies. Are we really supposed to believe that they had this on-again, off-again relationship, romantic relationship. And that the last time they saw each other, Beverly got pregnant with Jack. And the actor looks no younger than 30. He's actually 35. I mean, this guy's closer to my age. He would have been a teenager 20 years ago. But I guess we're just supposed to believe that he's no older than 22. And Beverly says she kept trying to tell Picard that she was pregnant and had a child. But he kept getting called away on some adventure, which sounds like bullshit to me. Because they haven't spoken in over 20 years. So how hard were you trying? How many fucking voicemails did she leave? It sounds like zero. And this idea that action kept getting in the way. I guess Picard, even in the waning years of his career, was this mega action hero. Because what she says is pretty ludicrous. You would think she was talking about James Bond or Rambo, the way she describes some of the things he had to deal with. She also says that there's always a target on Picard's back, and she didn't want that for Jack. Well, she did a bang-up job. I mean, look at him now. She seems to think that if Jack knew his father, he'd also be wrapped up in adventures his whole life, which is really funny, because they seem to have spent their entire lives adventuring, delivering medical supplies and care, fighting off pirates, all sorts of bad guys. She acts like she's provided this safe and secure life for him when there's a fucking Death Star chasing them through a nebula right now. And Picard's not blameless either. How is it possible that he never tried to contact her in 20 years? And don't say he tried. I'm pretty sure a Starfleet admiral could track down someone of Beverly's status pretty easily. Wasn't she the head of Starfleet Medical? And it's not even like she went across the galaxy. She was in Federation space this whole time. And he couldn't find her or send her a fucking text? And this is a nitpick, but how do you get pregnant on accident in the 24th century? I mean, surely the birth control measures have advanced to such a degree where this would never even happen. How do you have an oops baby in the 24th century? It's just ludicrous. All of this is a nightmarish misunderstanding of both of these characters, and it's just frustrating. It really is. And there's also an attempt to explain why Jack has an English accent. She says he went to school in London and never shook it. She also jokes and says maybe it's in his DNA. At least I hope she's fucking joking. And this is kind of the first actual acknowledgement that Picard has an English accent. We always knew it, and obviously he drinks Earl Grey tea, but he's supposed to be from France. And yet somehow a London accent is jokingly implied to be in his DNA. It's madness. And she also says that she encouraged Jack to meet Picard when he was old enough, and Jack chose not to. Tragic. And why is his name Jack? Why is his name Jack if he's Picard's son? Does that make sense to you? Because it doesn't make sense to me. I mean, they literally named a character just so it could be an Easter egg. That's it. That's all it is. It's an Easter egg. It's a reference to Jack Crusher, even though it makes absolutely no sense. But moving on. The Shrike somehow finds the Titan, and Vadik, one of her crew members, says the Titan is right where it should be. Obviously, there's a traitor on board the Titan. And it's obviously this dude with the sinister sourpuss on his face. They could not have possibly made it any more obvious. Wouldn't it be nice if we could not know until we know? Wouldn't that be something? And they attack. There's explosions on the bridge 20 odd years later, and they still haven't figured out how to fix that particular design flaw, I guess. And Shaw is injured, horribly injured. He gets a busted leg, and he's coughing up blood. He's a mess. And he turns command over to Riker. And they fire a torpedo and shoot it with a phaser. I don't know why that causes a massive explosion, but it does. It makes absolutely no sense to me that was the tactic here. I don't understand what that did. But it worked. The Shrike goes flying backwards. It does a fucking backflip. I had to rewind it to watch this again because it really made me laugh. The way the ship just does a loop-de-loop and flies backwards. It's just fucking ridiculous. And Picard tells Riker to call him number one, which I guess is a nice, funny moment. I guess. And then we jump over to Raffi, who awakens in some kind of hideout that Worf is hanging out in. He's listening to the same opera song that Picard was listening to in First Contact. Another shameless Easter egg. That really makes no sense. If he was listening to Melota, the Klingon opera song he likes so much, that would still be a shameless Easter egg, but at least it would make sense for his character. But despite that, Worf single-handedly comes pretty close to saving this episode for me. He's pretty great. He seems like Worf. He's ridiculously stoic. It's pretty great. I'm starting to think that Michael Dorn might understand his character more than any other Star Trek actor. And he should, because Worf has made more appearances in Star Trek than any character. 12 seasons now, and 4 movies. He's an icon. And Worf says he knows who paid off this Ferengi dude that he killed last week. Some guy named Titus Ricca. And he and Raffi track him down, and Worf chokeslams him through a table like the fucking Undertaker. It's pretty hilarious. And they play a little good cop, bad cop routine with him. Worf is the good cop, which is funny. And he seems to be kind of a tweaker of some kind. But he's not. He's actually a changeling who is desperate to revert back to his liquid form. And he's apparently part of a rogue faction of changelings. They didn't like losing the Dominion War, and they want to continue fucking around with the solids. I'm not totally clear what's going on here, but it seems like the giant portal gun was some kind of red herring, and there's an even bigger Death Star out there somewhere to worry about. That's what I gathered from this, but correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, it's pretty mindless. And the changeling turns into goo, and Worf shoots it before it can escape. And back on the Titan, Picard wants to use the mutual blindness of the two ships to give them a tactical advantage. But Riker just wants to try and hide until warp speed is operational. And no one, not one person, not Picard, not Riker, not Crusher, none of them wonder if there's a traitor in their midst. Crusher said, "Don't trust Starfleet." They have no idea how the Shrike found them so easily. I mean, why are they not putting this together? Why are they so stupid? It takes Shaw, of all people, who is basically bleeding out in sickbay right now, to actually ask the question. How does she keep finding us? How is he the only one asking this fucking question? And the science officer reports that they aren't in a typical nebula. It's an anomaly. And they shouldn't go in any further. Which I don't understand. This is not that far from Federation space. How is this nebula not a known thing? Did it just appear yesterday? And if it did, why aren't there 10 science ships out here to study it? Where did this random nebula come from? But whatever. Since it's dangerous, Riker decides to make a break for it. Warp seems to be back online miraculously, and he plans to punch it as soon as they're clear of the nebula. And the Shrike is, of course, right behind them. And it fires this portal gun, the same one that destroyed the Starfleet Recruitment Center in the first episode. And it shoots at the Titan, or in front of the Titan, and it transports it back into the nebula. Vadik and her crew call it the device, which, I mean, a lot of thought went into the naming of this weapon. Yes, shoot the thing. And Jack goes to see Seven at this time, who is apparently confined to quarters. There's a guard outside her door, which is kind of insane. Another reason why Shaw is mostly moronic. He should have allowed her to remain on active duty at least until this crisis is over. Like it or not, Seven is one of Star Trek's heavy hitters, and they need all the help they can get right now. And Jack tells Seven that he thinks they are leaving a trail of breadcrumbs for the Shrike to follow. He came to this ridiculous conclusion by looking at a trail of blood left by Captain Shaw. So he knocks the guard out in one punch, and they discover that the Titan has been leaking verterium, whatever the fuck that is. And that's how the Shrike has been following them. And someone's been doing it on purpose. And Picard, with shock on his face, says, "We have a saboteur."
Well, no shit.
But they can't worry about that right now because they're nearing the center of the nebula, and there is what is described as a strong intergravitational well at the center of it. I don't know what that is exactly. I'm guessing it's a black hole. So they have to avoid that. And Picard wants to use the sabotage to their advantage, to set a trap. But Riker wants to keep running. He seems to have lost his mojo. I don't know what's going on with Riker. I don't know what his problem is. But he's making a lot of stupid, borderline cowardly decisions. He wants to run, which might be a viable option if you're sure the Titan is faster than the Shrike. But is it? I mean, this fucking thing does everything. I don't think you can rule it out. And of course, it has this portal gun, which, granted, for the most of their arguing, they didn't know about that. So they can't anticipate something like that, but it's a pretty moot point now. I mean, they could just keep trapping them in the nebula if they try to run. And Jack gets attacked by the saboteur, and what do you know? It's this fucking chud with the resting evil face. And it turns out that he's a changeling as well. And when Jack comes around, he says his attacker's face morphed a little bit, like a changeling would. I have no idea how Jack would know what a changeling is. I mean, they've been gone since before he was born. Or whatever. And the changeling sabotaged the warp engines. Their escape plan is kaput. So Picard is finally able to convince Riker to fight. They fire on the Shrike, but it uses the portal gun to send the Titan's own torpedoes back at it, and it disables them. And they fall into the gravity well. And Riker tells Picard to leave the bridge. He says, "You've just killed us all." And that's how the episode ends. And this might be what pisses me off more than anything else. Under no circumstances would Riker say that to Picard. You do not understand these characters on any level if you believe this line of dialogue. First of all, Riker is the captain. He asks for advice, sure. But he can't blame a crew member, or Picard, if he decides to take it. The captain is responsible for the welfare of his ship and crew, period. And his last words to his old friends would never be blame or malice. Unless, is it possible that Riker is a changeling? Is that a real possibility? I kind of doubt it, because he seemed so much like Riker earlier, and he knows intimate things that a changeling wouldn't know. But whether he is or he isn't, it's a dumb thing for Riker to say. And I'm also sick and tired of every fucking episode of this show ending with the Titan in peril. All 3 episodes have ended this way. I get you're trying to be dramatic and create hype for the next episode, but it's getting old. I'm starting to not care. Change it up a little bit, please. And the big reveal in this episode is obviously the changelings being back, which I think is a little ridiculous. Not that they're back, but that they're back and the Next Generation crew is dealing with them. They are DS9 enemies. There have to be Next Generation fans who won't know or care about anything to do with the changelings. It just seems like a poor choice for Next Gen's last mission. Just feels lazy. It's like they were struggling to find bad guys. Let's see, we wrecked the Borg and Q last season. What other bad guys are there? I guess we'll just borrow something from Deep Space Nine, seemingly not realizing that TNG was never really about the bad guys. I wish they would fucking realize that. But having said that, I still think the changelings as bad guys in this is better than some of the fan theories that we've heard up to this point. I hate to be petty, but I heard a lot of people suggest that it's going to be the aliens from Conspiracy, the season 1 TNG episode that involved bugs controlling people's brains. And I'm at least somewhat relieved that wasn't true. Don't take this personally, I'm only teasing you. But if you thought that was going to happen, I really have to laugh, and you should too. I mean, come on. How ridiculous would it be if Picard's final adventure was the return of some one-off, body-snatching bug aliens from Season 1 of TNG? Nothing from Season 1 of TNG should ever be brought back unless we're talking about Q, lore, or the occasional Tasha Yar resurrection. What a silly end that would have been for Picard and crew. Yeah, let's bring back Armus, the shit monster, while we're at it. I'm sorry, I'm roasting you a bit. Don't take it personally. And I'm wrong a lot too. Often wrong Eddie. That's what lore would call me. And while I might be relieved that it's not the conspiracy bugs, I still think the Changelings is a square peg in a round hole, which is ironic because they're liquid. But they need references, man. They need anything new they can't do. So they need to go back and bring whatever they can. They can't do Q anymore, which would have been the logical choice for Next Gen's ending, because they blew that load last season. He's dead. And all I could do is shake my head. I'm sure a lot of other fans feel the same way. Overall, not a good episode. Worf was the absolute highlight for me. My biggest issues were the piss-poor explanation for how Jack is Picard's son, the endless member berries, and how Riker reacted at the end. And I'm sorry for going on a bit of a rant here. I really kind of lost my cool a little bit. But it's just frustrating. It's frustrating to see. And it's kind of even more frustrating that this is just accepted as good Star Trek by the vast majority of people. Even by fans who have hated everything up until this point seem to be enjoying this season. I just don't understand it. And if you are enjoying it, that's great. I really don't want to hinder your enjoyment in any way. You probably shouldn't be watching this video right now if you enjoyed it. It's obviously just my opinion, but I wish I could see some more fans questioning it a little bit. And it seems like there's less now than ever before. I don't know. This one just gave me a headache. Sorry for ranting and raving. Let me know how you felt about it. Are you with me? Am I wrong? Am I out of touch? Am I just overreacting? Let me know. And that's all I got for now. Until next time, take it easy.